The next reaction is going to be a modification of the epoxidation reaction. It's going to result in addition of two hydroxyl groups to the former carbons of the alkene. Therefore, it is called a dihydroxylation. Di meaning two. We're going to see two other dihydroxylations. Those dihydroxylations will have the syn stereochemistry. This one is characterized by having anti-stereochemistry. The observed reaction looks like this. We start with an alkene, we put in a peroxycarboxylic acid, and then we treat that product with aqueous acid. This is a good time to introduce you to some of the other symbols that organic chemists use. Aqueous strong acid, as we learned in general chemistry, when we put a strong acid into water, the strong acid will generally react with the water acting as a base. So the water removes a proton from the acid and becomes a hydronium ion. And for strong acids, this reaction is so heavily favored that a huge portion, close to 100%, of the acid will be deprotonated and become hydronium. Organic chemists recognize this, and so when we intend to use aqueous strong acid, instead of writing aqueous strong acid, instead what we do is we write hydronium. Hydronium being the species that we would get by taking a strong acid plus water. We could also write dilute acid, so dilute H2SO4 that we saw in an earlier reaction is essentially the same thing as writing hydronium. And in fact, in some cases, some organic chemists prefer to write hydronium for that reagent. At the end of this reaction, the double bond will be converted to a single bond, and we will get a hydroxyl group attached to each carbon of the former alkene. The mechanism looks like this. The first step of the mechanism is an epoxidation reaction. We form a molecule of epoxide. That proceeds with syn stereochemistry, as we mentioned earlier, and it possesses a three-membered ring. What we're then going to do is allow the water to cut open that ring and attach to one of the carbons. This is called acid-catalyzed hydrolysis. Acid-catalyzed hydrolysis uses water as a nucleophile in the presence of a catalytic amount of acid. The water nucleophile causes the bond to break, and then it attaches. So because we are cutting a bond, lysis means cutting. So hydrolysis is cutting with water. If we follow our mechanism then, we first make the two stereoisomers of the epoxide. That epoxide then has pairs of electrons that can react in an acid-base reaction with the strong acid, which in this case would probably be hydronium, but I prefer to just write hydrogen attached to a conjugate base, not worrying about specifically what the actual acid is. So we make a bond here, we break that. Now we get a cyclic cationic intermediate, just as we saw in halohydrogen reaction, just like we saw in oxymercuration, demercuration. If you haven't already caught it, when you have cyclic cationic intermediates and you react them with nucleophiles, the nucleophile approaches from the back side, breaks open the ring, resulting in a net anti-addition. The three-membered ring epoxide has a high amount of ring strain, so it's very desirable for this ring to be broken. That makes this epoxide extremely reactive, and that's why it reacts quickly and readily with the relatively weak nucleophile water. If we follow our stereochemistry, if the oxygen attached to the top face, then the water would attach from the bottom face. In contrast, if the oxygen attached to the bottom face, then the water would attack from the top face. We would get an intermediate after the opening where one of the carbons would still have a water attached. In other words, the oxygen would have two hydrogens plus a bond to the carbon and would have a positive charge. As we've seen before, a base can deprotonate an intermediate like this, making our final neutral uncharged product. If you look, these products then have essentially mirror image stereochemistry, and they will be enantiomers if there are no other chirality centers in the molecule. We can also do Syndihydroxylation. We're going to learn two reagents for doing this. The first of these is potassium permanganate, KMnO4. To do Syndihydroxylation with potassium permanganate, what we do is we mix potassium permanganate plus hydroxide ion, and we cool it to 0 degrees. It's not written here, but these are aqueous solutions, so we can't really go much below 0 degrees, or the reaction would freeze. In this reaction then, what we see is that at the end, the double bond has become a single bond and we attach a hydroxyl group on each side. A similar reaction occurs with this substance. This is actually the element osmium. It's a transition metal. We use osmium tetroxide. Now this can be done stoichiometrically, in other words, 1 mole of alkene, 1 mole of osmium. But osmium tetroxide and the byproducts of osmium are toxic, and osmium is expensive. So a method was developed where we actually use a catalytic amount of osmium tetroxide, and then we put in hydrogen peroxide to essentially reoxidize the osmium back to osmium tetroxide every time it reacts. At the end of this reaction, again, the alkene is converted to a single bond and we add a hydroxyl group to each carbon of the former alkene. We're not going to cover the mechanism of this reaction. Again, I don't think it helps us understand fundamental organic chemistry. However, I will say that it involves a syn addition to the alkene. Sorry, it involves a synchronous addition to the alkene, which is going to produce a syn addition in stereochemistry. Synchronous reactions generally result in syn addition. Here's an example showing potassium permanganate. If we start with this alkene, we put in potassium permanganate hydroxide at a cold temperature. The double bond is converted to a single bond, and then we attach OHs from the same face. So for example, both from the top or both from the bottom. When they attach from the top, the other two groups are pushed away by VSEPR. When they attach from the bottom, the other two groups are pushed up and away by VSEPR. We get these two products. These are mirror images of each other, and they will be enantiomers if there is no other chirality center in the molecule. The next reaction that we're going to look at is called ozonolysis. In this reaction, we're going to start with an alkene. Now, I have intentionally put a hydrogen on one of the positions of the alkene because depending on what is attached to the alkene before the reaction, we can get either an aldehyde or a ketone, as we shall see. In this reaction, we put in ozone gas directly. Then we put in a reagent to reduce and break apart the intermediate. In this case, the reagent we're going to use is dimethyl sulfide. However, older textbooks taught zinc and water or zinc and acetic acid in place of this, so you might encounter that on a standardized exam. This is the more modern reagent. It results in better yields, a better efficiency of the reaction. The result of this reaction looks a little more complex. In terms of connectivity, what happens is we cut the double bond into two halves, but leave them as double bonds. And then we insert oxygens at the location of the cut. Because we're cutting the bond, that's why this is called a lysis reaction. We're cutting the bond with ozone. Inserting these oxygens onto the double bonds makes carbonyls, C double bond O molecules, and we make two of them because we've cut the double bond into two halves. These carbonyls will be either aldehydes or ketones depending on what the other groups attached. So for example, if there was already a hydrogen attached to the double bond carbon, then at the end we would get a hydrogen attached to the carbonyl, and that would make that molecule an aldehyde. In contrast, if there were only carbon groups attached to the double bond carbon, then our carbonyl would have only carbon groups attached, and that would make it a ketone. This is a really useful method for making aldehydes and ketones. We're not going to cover the mechanism of this reaction. It's rather arcane and literally, I think, teach us nothing about basic organic chemistry. Our next reaction that we're going to talk about is called oxidative cleavage. Cleavage is another word for cutting, so it could be called oxidative lysis, but lysis is really typically only used as part of a word. Cleavage is the word for if it's a separate word. Again, what we're going to do is we're going to start with an alkene, and again, I've put a hydrogen on one of the carbons of the alkene. This is important because it has a big effect on what the product looks like. What we're going to do is we're going to use potassium permanganate and hydroxide, but we're going to use it at a warm temperature, basically room temperature. We're then going to add hydronium afterwards to neutralize the hydroxide and to protonate the product, and I'll show you that in just a moment. In this reaction, we will again cut the alkene into two halves and insert oxygen on each half of the double bond, creating carbonyls. However, we will also replace any hydrogens directly attached to the alkene with hydroxyl groups. If we do this in the presence of hydroxide ion, the carboxylic acid that's produced would react with the hydroxide, and we would get what's called carboxylate. We would get the deprotonated conjugate base form of this product. Assuming that we want the acid, what we would have to do then is add hydronium in order to protonate that and get us back to the acid. So that's why this second step is necessary. Again, we are not going to cover the mechanism of this reaction. There is, however, one detail that I want to point out to you. We're going to see in second semester that very often when you put multiple groups on a carbon with a hydroxyl, those become unstable. Particularly a carbon that has two hydroxyl groups simultaneously attached will spontaneously decompose in the presence of acid or base, and it will form a carbonyl and water. This is important because if we use an alkene that has two hydrogens attached to the same carbon, then when we do this reaction, what we're going to end up with is, on one side, whatever, but on the other side, we're going to end up with this species right here, C double bond O, OH, and OH, because each of these two hydrogens was replaced with a hydroxyl group. This is a very special molecule called carbonic acid. And it turns out that carbonic acid is extremely unstable, especially in acid. So in our second step, when we put in the acid, this will decompose. When it decomposes, one of the hydroxyls comes off and forms a water. The other hydroxyl forms a second C double bond O and is deprotonated. And the molecule with two C double bond O's is actually carbon dioxide. So the net result of this would be to produce this molecule, whatever it is, plus a molecule of carbon dioxide, which would then bubble out of the solution. I bring this up because in our textbook problems, they do ask some questions about predicting the products, and they do, in cases where there are two hydrogens on our reactant, they do write carbon dioxide instead of the carbonic acid, assuming that we all know that the carbonic acid would spontaneously decompose and form the carbon dioxide. So just keep an eye out for that. The last part then is just a summary of all the observed reactions that we've covered in this chapter. I'd like to point out that these reactions are all written in the format reactant, reagents over the arrow, products. And generally, the reactants or products are the organic participants in the reaction, and then the reagents are all the inorganic and other things that cause the reactant to change into the organic product. You have these in your notes and you can see them. We've covered quite a lot of reactions.